Chapter 94, Monday, 4th of November. Garnet's voice was playing in the radio as Bryce Lauren drove the van across the road, across the rough cart track. An idiot rabbit sat upright dead against, staring, mesmerized by his headlights. He felt it bump under his front wheel, then a more violent bump as they jolted through a rut. He holed up in the Brighton station car park until dusk, wanting his approach to his fracture to be in the dark, to give them a minimum chance of being spotted. He spent a highly enjoyable few hours just sitting in the van, reading out loud to Red in the back all the texts she had sent him in the months of their courtship. There were so many gems, some absolute gems. Too bad he couldn't hear her reaction because he didn't dare move the gag in case she tried to screaming. Now they were on their way. He hummed to himself in tune to the music opera. He never got the damn stuff when he was young. It was only when he had worked on the runway inspection team at Gatwick Airport that one of his colleagues had explained it to him, or rather unexplained. Opera, he had said, is raw emotion. Forget trying to intellectualize it, just let the emotion carry you along. Yep, he had been right. So now, as he drove, he let the raw emotion flood through him, raising his arms from the wheel, humming, then singing out loud. Rummy tum tummity. He was so happy he had read back, yes, raw emotion. He glanced over his shoulder as they jolted over another rut. Soon be there, my baby. Rummity tum tum tummity. He sang loudly, his lungs close to bursting. They were almost a mile from the nearest drilling. His factory was right ahead, just 100 yards to go. He burst into a song again, copying the French libretto. He had no idea what the words meant, but he sounded good. His mother had once told him he had a beautiful voice, that he could have been an opera singer, and now he was one. He looked over his shoulder again to see whether Red was appreciating it, but it was difficult to tell with the gag duct tape in her mouth and the blindfold duct tape around her forehead. It's good to see you again, Red, my angel, he said. You've no idea how good this makes me feel, you and I, with the rest of our lives ahead of us. How good is that? Chapter 95, Monday, 4th of November. The Monday evening briefing was a sombre event. The death of any police officer in any force throughout the UK was felt with a level of sadness by every serving officer, regardless of where they were. But when it was a member of their own team, the impact was totally devastating. As an indication of how seriously this whole of Sussex Police took it, Cassian Pugh was sitting in on the meeting with them. Roy Grace had fortunately never lost an officer before, and the fact that Bellamoy had been such a long-standing member of his team, someone he had greatly respected and grown fond of, made it all far worse. Norman Potting bravely was attending, red-eyed and hunched over the table, looking lost. He had wanted to be there, he told Roy, as he couldn't face the alternative of going home and sitting all alone, and besides, this was now personal. Roy agreed he could attend the briefing, but they both decided that he should no longer be part of the investigation. It was too early for the investigators to tell the cause of the fire that had gutted the Royal Region. But the coincidence of it being the place Fred Westwood had been planning to move to was deeply suspicious to all of them, and the fact that there had been two hoax calls sending the nearest fire appliances away in opposite directions to the fire was too coincidental to be ignored. The investigation into the cause of the fire would begin in earnest tomorrow morning, by which time the building should have been cooled down sufficient to enable structural engineers to enter and make it safe. I want to start this evening, Roy Gray said, with 1 minute silence, in honour of our fallen colleague, Detective Sergeant Bellamoy, one of the very best and nicest officers I have ever worked with. She gave her life to save a small girl. He looked at his watch and then closed his eyes. Throughout the ensuing long minute, he could hear Norman Potting sobbing. When he opened his eyes, counting down silently for the last few seconds, hardly any of the team had a dry eye. Can I suggest Bella be put forward for a medal for bravery, Roy? Guy Batchelor said. He nodded yes. I'm going to talk to the chief about it. Dave Green, the crime scene manager, said grimly. So damn tragic. Roy Grace said firmly, but gently, she saved a child's life. So why didn't Bella come out after doing that? Green said. She must have stayed on to try to get the dog. We don't know that, Grace said. We don't know what happened in there. If it's any consolation, Hayden said. The sculptor Giacomo was once asked if he was in a burning house and had the choice of saving a Rembrandt or cat. Which would he save? He replied the cat. He said that in any choice between art or life, he would always choose life every time. Potting. his face buried in his hands, sobbed even more loudly. Roy Gray stood up, walked over to him, and put his arms around him. She did everything. She did something very brave and honest. He said, "What's happened is terrible, and there are no words to describe how we are all feeling, and especially how you must be feeling. She did something that any of us might have done and might one day have to do. That's why we are police officers and not clerks sitting behind desks, spending our lives pushing paper around, living in a sterile cocoon of sodding health and safety. Every time we go out, we potentially face a life-threatening situation. I would hope that in the same situation that Bella found herself in, any of us would have the courage to do the same thing, to take that same risk she did." He squeezed the detective sergeant soldiers. "The best possible way with Bella is to ensure she did not die in vain, and that means catching the bastard before he can put any more lives at risk." He leaned down, kissed Noah, pointing on the cheek, then returned to his chair and looked down at his notes through eyes blurred with tears. He paused for a moment to dab them with his handkerchief. "Okay, the first and most urgent item concerns Fred Westwood, who has not been seen since she left her office at 10 a.m. today for a number of viewings of residential properties in the Brighton area. Her mother has been trying to get a hold of her for several hours. Her last confirmed sighting was a house in Coleman Avenue, Hove, where she showed a couple around and she had an appointment with a client to view a house in Tongden Avenue." He looked at D.C. Exton. "John, you went there. Can you tell us your finding?" "Yes, sir. I attended with D.C. Davis. The gates to the property were open. I found a mini with a Mission McKay logo on it. It's apparently abandoned there. There was no answer when we rang. So we forced entry and searched the house and surrounded areas, but there was no sign of Red Westwood. I requested a NPR and all CCTV sightings of her car prior to her arriving at the house, and what I have to date confirms the journey from the previous address to Tongden Avenue. The surveillance team saw her enter the property, but don't know what happened after that. She just disappeared. They couldn't get close in such a quiet area, but they did say no one followed her into the grounds of the house. When they were able to move forward safely, they found her Mission McKay Mini still at the premise, but she was nowhere to be found. Subsequently, on searching the gardens of the rear of the property, officers discovered the 6-foot wide piece of paneling that fenced the property off from the road on the other side had been removed, and there were tire marks over the ground. It appeared the rigger had left the property by this makeshift exit. Grace nodded, annoyed about the loss, but knew from his own past experience that surveillance work would never be 100%. "I've taken the step of having Red Westwood's parents temporarily removed from the hotel in Eastbourne, where they have been staying because of the house being torched. I've also ordered a round-the-clock police guard on her best friend Raquel Evans and her husband would put an alert to find Miss Westwood, and their operations being run by the Judy Gold Superintendent Jackson alongside this investigation. As this was now a formal success police operation, the gold, silver and bronze command structure was in place. Gold had set the strategy, silver was implementing the strategy, and the bronze commanders each had their own areas of responsibility, such as investigation, firearms, or search. He looked at D.S. Batchelor. "You've checked on her flat, Guy?" "Yes, sir. There's no sign of her there." So working back to her last known sighting, which was with, he paused to look down at his notes, "and Mr. and Mrs. Morley. They have subsequently been spoken to, correct?" He looked at D.C. Jack Alexander. "Yes, sir. I had met with Mr. John Morley at his office, a firm of independent financial advisors, early this afternoon. He said that they arrived late for the viewing because of having gone in the wrong address first, and that Miss Westwood seemed in a slightly agitated state because they had made her late for her next appointment, but she showed them around, was pleasant and helpful." "Anything suspicious about them?" Grace quizzed. "No, sir. He dropped his wife back at Seaford for an amateur dramatic rehearsal at 12:10. I checked this out, and he was telling me the truth." "And what about Morley's movement after then?" "He had lunch with a client at Topolini's restaurant in Cove. I spoke to one of the owners who confirmed he had arrived shortly after 1 p.m. "Good work," Grace said. "Miss Westwood's manager at Mission McKay informed me that her next appointment, the last before she was due to return to the office, was for midday at a house in Togden Green called Togden Lodge. The appointment was with a Mr. Andrew Austin. He was a new client with a wife and a son looking for a prestigious property, as she had noted down the phone number on the log, and she written the legend entered on the computer. This is a procedure carried out by all estate agents ever since the disappearance of Susie Lamplug. Susie Lamplug was an estate agent who went missing, presumed murdered in South London in 1986. She had gone to show a client who had given his name as Mr. Kipper around a secluded property, and she was never seen again." "Has someone phoned Mr. Austin?" Grace asked. "Yes, sir. The manager had the number And I tried also. It's answered by an elderly man on holiday in Tenerife in the Canary Islands. I contacted the phone provider O2 and they've confirmed his name is a subscriber and I phoned the hotel where he stayed. He claimed to be staying and they've confirmed he and his wife were there. Tongnan Lodge is for £3.5 million, sir, DC Alexander said. Grace was pensive for some moments. Andrew asked him, someone who can afford a house of that value has to be pretty seriously wealthy. Have you tried Googling him? Looking up on Wikipedia? Both, sir. There are hundreds of them. What about the owners of Tongnan Lodge? They're way out of second home. They own in Florida. Jack Alexander checked his notes. They have a couple who clean called Mark and Debbie Brown, but they were not there today. The gardener comes in on Friday. They would not have been in on the property. Grace looked down at some jottings he had made on his pad. So Red was last seen apparently on her way to meet up Len, who might not exist, who gave a false phone number. He looked around the grimly silent sea of faces. I don't like the sound of this, not one bit. Presumably someone has checked again that she's not lying somewhere in the grounds. Guy back to us. Yes, Alexander replied. The grounds have been checked and she's not there. Grace looked back at his pad. This day, which he thought could not possibly get any worse, has only got a whole lot worse. Chapter 96, Monday, 4th of November. Red had a splitting headache, made worse by the smell of exhaust fumes and the jolting of the vehicle. Her mouth and throat were parched and she was desperate for water, and she pounded inside it, and the pounding inside it was making it hard for her to think clearly. She should be afraid, she knew, but instead she was angry at herself for having walked into this trap, angry at Bryce. She tried yet again to move her numb arms and then her legs, but he'd done a good job on them, and she could not even bring her legs together. She felt like a manacled animal, and she desperately needed to pee. She was not going to be able to hold much longer. The vehicle, presumably the white van she had seen at the house, lurched again over something, a rock. Guess you must be thirsty and need the loo. You could never go very long without needing to pee, could you, Red? Using the facilities as you always so delicately call them. You'd be needing the facilities now, I bet, hey? So then he picked up a mobile phone from the passenger seat. I would so love to switch this on, Red, your phone. I'm holding it. I had to switch it off, same as I did mine, because phones give out our location position even when they're idle. Be nice to switch it on though and see who's been missing you, your mummy and daddy, I bet. Wonder what she would say if she could see the two of us now, eh? The happy couple we would have been. We both know that. If she hadn't meddled so much, she just didn't get it, did she? She didn't get us. She was all obsessed about my past. Hey, who hasn't bigged themselves up just a little? We all told little porkies. Do you think there's a politician in the world who hasn't? That's all I did, and she destroyed us for that. You heard all those texts you sent me? They were from your heart, Red. Surely you meant all you said in them, because you loved me for what I was, not all the shit I had once been. If only your mother could have seen that, everything would be so different now. He smiled and looked in the mirror, although he could see only darkness reflected in it. We're nearly there. I'll take your gag off and your blindfold, and we'll see what you have to say for yourself. I do keep thinking that maybe I should give you one more chance if you're willing to give it a go, but then I realise all the bad stuff I've done just recently. That's just going to catch up with me, and where's that going to leave us? Me in prison, knowing you were out there screwing a new man. It's one hell of a dilemma, eh, Red? He halted the van outside the cluster of farm buildings, climbed out, leaving the engine running, and jerked open the two barn doors of the old grain store beside his workshop. Drive in and stop, then switched off the engine lights. Then he opened his door. The hot engine ticked and pinged noisily in silence. The barn was cold and smelled of old straw and at the moment exhaust fumes from the van. He turned his head to gaze at his prisoner in the weak glow of the roof light. Oh, Red, how different it could have been, eh? How very different. I'm quite sad, really. This is not what I had planned for you. All the time back on our first date, it really isn't. I'm sure this isn't how either of us wanted to end up, is it? She lay motionless. Red, he said. Then he became alarmed. Red. He ran around the rear of the van, opened the doors and climbed in. Red. She lay as still as a corpse. Chapter 97, Monday, 4th of November. Roy Grace's mother used to look at the clock on the kitchen wall at home and say, how's the enemy? Time was always the enemy to her. To the end of finally running out on her in the cancer ward at the Royal Sussex Country Hospital. Time was everyone's enemy. He thought more acutely than ever at this moment, checking his watch in the conference room of Sussex House. It was 6:45 p.m. Right now the inquiry was in fast time, where every second counted. If Red Westwood had been taken at the house by the mysterious Androsson. That would have been shortly after midday, over 6 hours ago. It was a grim fact that most victims of adoptions were murdered within 3 hours, but if Androsson was indeed Bryce Lauren, which seemed the most likely scenario, then there was a good chance she was still alive. Grace had no real idea what Lauren would want with her or hoped to gain by abducting her, and a number of dark scenarios crossed his mind. Normally his team was sparking with thoughts and ideas at briefings, but this evening they were all so damn quiet. He suddenly clapped his hands together really loudly. Listen, everyone, I know we're all in shock, but that's not going to help us save Red Westwood's life. If I just hope to hell she's still alive now, okay? Right now, forget Bella. However tough that it is for all of us, we have a very serious and urgent job to do. He looked around at his team and was greeted by nods. They understood. He sensed a distinct sudden mood change in the room, as if something had been unblocked, and everyone had just got the energy supply back. We had a number of sightings of Bryce Lauren called in, following our appeals in the press and media. Becky Davis, the researcher, said, we've had a response from a bed and breakfast hotel called Strawberry Fields saying they had a long-staying guest who checked out something yesterday, who they say looks like Bryce Lauren. His name was Paul Millett, and they have a credit card imprint in his name. As fortunately for us, they insist on payment by credit card. Grace turned to the Holmes analysis. Keely Scanlon, give this name to the financial investigator, see what it throws up. Yes, sir. John Exton raised a hand. I took a call earlier this morning from the manager of Cuba Libre restaurant who'd seen the photograph of Bryce Lauren. He's convinced that he was working for him on the day of the fire. Bryce Lauren working in the restaurant, Grace said. Yes, as a busboy. He started there 3 days earlier. Grace frowned. Under what name? Jason Benfield. Grace looked up at the whiteboard on which all the Lauren analysis were listed. I don't see this one there, but this doesn't mean a thing. Do we have any idea yet of the cause of that fire? Tony Gurr, the chief inspector, said yes, Roy. It looks to us that it was caused by stacking tea towels and other laundry items. The detective superintendent gave him a quizzical look. Stacking tea towels? Cotton laundry, Gurr explained, such as chef's whites, apron, tea towels and cloths are normally contaminated with organic cooking oils. These can self-combust spontaneously if they're taken out of the tumble dryer. It's stacked before they even has a chance to cool down. So, do many people know this? Someone working in the catering trade should, and a fire officer should know. Most will have attended fires started this way. Bryce Lauren was in the fire brigade for a short time. Glenn Branson said, seems a bit too coincidental for him to be working there. Dispatcher said, particularly to have just started working there 3 days, enough time for him to have become familiar with how everything worked. Grace nodded. Yes, I agree. He made a note. It was more evidence of Bryce's obsession and determination to ruin everything to do with Red Westwood's life. Is there any job this guy has not done? Said a new recruit to the team, DC Danielle Goodman. I had a call this morning from a man called Paul Davison, who runs a headhunting agency called SLM Search and Selection. The full name is Shortlist Me. They're based in Leeds but operating nationwide. He told me he recognised Lauren from the photograph he had worked with. He had worked for his company for a brief while under his alias of Paul Millett. I went to talk to him at his Brighton office early this morning. He worked as a headhunter, Grace asked. Yes, sir. Mr. Davidson told me he recognised him as a narcissist right away and someone with a serious lack of empathy, a sociopath, in other words. But he took him because he had an extreme impressive CV and references. Davidson said he was quite a successful headhunter because he was never emotionally attached to his clients, but ultimately grew concerned because he became too manipulative, maneuvering his clients like pawns on a chessboard, in his words. How long did Lawrence Sarah work for Shortlist Me? Grace asked. Just over 3 months. Paul Davidson started noticing anger management issues, especially when anyone tried asking him too many questions about his past. That made Davidson suspicious. So he began looking more deeply into the references Millett had provided. He also looked in his briefcase one day. In his briefcase? Glenn Branson said with a frown. Was he nicking things from the office? No, sir, DC. Goodness. And apparently Millett used to come into the office every day with a really swanky briefcase, which he really had no need for one at all. Davison said he looked in one time when Millett was in a meeting with a client and found it contained a hairdryer, foundation, toothbrush, toothpaste, different coloured contact lenses, hair gel, and a book on how to become a top salesperson. I've always wondered what was in your bag, Glenn. Geiger Bachelor ribbed him. Does that all sound familiar? There was a ripple of laughter, and Grace was glad to hear it. Even Glenn Branson grinned. Laughter was a major coping mechanism for all police officers when confronted with horror. The day you couldn't laugh, no matter how grim the situation was, a dangerous day for your mental state. Okay, the picture I'm getting more and more clearly of Bryce Lauren is that of a highly intelligent man, a chameleon with anger issues and the inability to hold down a job. But none of this is helping us with what we urgently need right now, which is to find him. We need to know his vehicle and then start looking at what ANPR cameras he's pinged or what CCTV footage of it there might be. Dave Green raised his hand. Boss, he said to Roy, I've had the results of the analysis on the petrol in the can found at Hayward's Heath Golf Club. It is one produced by BP, regular unleaded. There are dozens and dozens of BP filling stations across the country. We'll need to look at CCTV from each of one of them going back weeks in the hope of spotting Bryce Laurent. Grace thought about it for a moment, wrote BP on his pad, and made a circle around it. If we can't find this bastard any other way, we may have to resort to this, Dave. But it's a massive task and one that will take days, if not weeks. That's not going to help us save Red Westwood. Another DC. Martha Ritchie raised her hand. I've spoken to the charity Rise for Abuse Women, where Red worked during her relationship with Laurent. They gave me the name of her counsellor, Judith Biddlestone, who I called this afternoon to see if she might have any idea from what Red told her where Bryce Laurent might be located. Apparently he had a secret location where he went to practice some of his conjuring tricks, particularly the ones involving fire and explosives. Graham Branson responded, we know that under his alias, Pat Tolley, he was granted a fireworks license and operated for a time out of a farm building in Suffolk, but he has long vacated these premises and we haven't been able to establish from where he is currently operating that business is still as it, if he still is at it all. The door opened and Ray Packham from the high-tech crime unit entered. I'm sorry, I'm late, Chief, he said, but I have something that might be of interest. Yes, tell us, Roy, Grace said. Packham had a wry smile on his face. Would the words Geotech or Earnview mean anything to anyone here? The crime scene manager raised his hand. Something to do with locating coordinates of places in photographs. Exactly, Ray Packham said. Last week, Miss Westwood received a cartoon through email of sharks circling around the hull of a yacht. It was sent as a JPEG, which I identified at the time as having been taken from a camera phone, which is very helpful, you see, as I explained before, unless the location option is switched off. When a digital camera takes a photograph, it's embedded in the photograph the exact time it was taken, as well as the compass coordinates, which are accurate to within 50 feet. He hesitated, and Grace said, further research reveals that the phone used had been in a static position for several days since then. Triangulation from the mobile phone mast gives us position approximately half a mile south of the Dyke Golf Club. They all looked at one whiteboard to which was pinned a large scale map of the country of success. Grace stood up and went over to the map. He looked at the scale indicator, then ran his finger over a section on the green on which was marked a cluster of buildings. In here, he said, that's where the photograph was taken, sir, Packham said. How sure are you? Grace asked. 100%. Grace picked up the phone to the Silver Commander and updated him with the information. The Silver Commander then rang Andy Kuehl, the Duty Ops 1, and requested the helicopter NPAS 15. He read out the coordinates that Roy Grace had given him, requested cars to get close to the scene with a fast but silent approach and to stand by but remain as inconspicuous as possible in the area. He wanted to begin to tighten the net around the location that was looking good for where Bryce was holding his victim. He also updated Gold, who was running the suspected abduction operation, with his new information. Chapter 98, Monday, 4th of November. In the back of the van with the rear doors open, Bryce shook Red. Are you okay, Red, my love? Are you okay, Red? She still did not move. He stared down a ligature around her throat. Had he made it too tight? Had she choked or strangled to death? Oh, shit, no, God, please, no, please. Red, he shouted, shaking her heart. There was no response. Red, nothing. Christ, he tried to think clearly, to think back to slugging her on the head at Tonkton. Oh, shit. Had he hit her too hard? Caused a hemorrhage? No, it was just a tap, surely, just a tap hard enough to knock her out. But that was all, surely. He shook her. Red, my love, my angel, are you okay? Please wake up, please. Please wake up. Don't do this to me. I have so much pain for us. Really, I do. Don't be a bitch and deprive me. Please, don't do that. I have so much pain lined up for you. You hear me, you bitch? You hear me? He kissed her on the cheek, smelled her hair. It smelled the way it always had been when they were lovers. A faint scent of coconut, lemongrass. He nuzzled his face in it. Wake up, my darling, my angel. Please wake up. I love you so much. Wake up. I love you. Wake up. She stayed limp, her eyes closed. He held her wrist, trying to take her pulse, but his heartbeat had gone crazy. He heard the roaring of his own blood in his ears, felt the pulse of his body, his pulse rate. He said, urgent, wake up, my darling, wake up. We have so much to talk about. Wake up, it's me, Bryce. I love you so much, so damn much. Wake up. Was he imagining, or was her body turning cold? Red, please don't die on me, don't die on me. I'm ready, don't cheat me, please. He tore at the straps, straining her, undoing them one at a time. Red, I read, my darling, my angel, my beautiful, come back to me, come back to Bryce, come back to me. When her arms and legs were free, he began chest compression, still nothing. He gently pulled the duct tape from her mouth with shake hands, pressed her lips to hers, and began the compression again, then felt an agonizing pain as she bit right through his lower lip and jammed her fingers in his eyes so hard she was starting to gouge them out. He screamed, momentarily blinded, thrashing at her with his hands. She bit harder. He tasted blood. He could see nothing. He squirmed, wriggled, but her fingers, nail sharp, kept pushing into his socket. She was wriggling beneath him. Suddenly he could no longer feel her silence. His eyes were in agony. He raised his fingers and felt fluid. Lights flashed all around him. Green, yellow, blue, orange, bright red. No! He screamed, no, you fucking bitch. He clamped his hands over his left eye, which was stinging as if it had been sprayed with acid. All he could see through it was streaks of colour. He swung himself around in the darkness. Come back, come here, Red. His head struck something hard, the roof of the van. He realised. He stared with his good eye at the roof light, which burned as bright as laser, and shards of brilliant white in his all direction. Red, he screamed. Red. He grabbed his crossbow off the front seat. Beside it lay the nightstand. He lifted that to the right eye, his good eye, and saw her running away. She was running across the field. He snapped off the day sight and sipped on the night sight. Now he could see her clearly against the green landscape. He took careful aim. She was already quite a distance away, a good 8 yards, he estimated. 8 yards was the distance he was practiced on for Rottingdean Church. Slowly, much more calmly than he felt inside, he brought the crosshairs of the sight down to the middle of her back. Then he squeezed the trigger. Chapter 99, Monday, 4th of November. Roy Gray stared at his watch and cursed the damn budget cuts. Success Police, in line with all of the nation's other 42 forces, were required to reduce its annual expenditure by 20%. A government edict, one of the says, had been to lose the county's combined police and air ambulance helicopter. Hotel 900, located at Shoreham Airport, which had the capability to be anywhere in the city of Brighton Hove in under 3 minutes. Now, with the advent of the National Police Air Service, the helicopter allocated to the NPAS-15 was shared with Surrey, Kent and Hampshire, and located at Red Hill. It took a minimum of 15 minutes for the helicopter to reach Brighton, providing it was even available. Fortunately, it was. He sat at his allocated workstation in MIR1 rather than return to his office, watching the time. With growing frustration, the helicopter was still 10 minutes away. There was no certainty that Bryce Laurent was in one of those farm buildings south of the Dyke Golf Course, but it was all they had to go on at that moment and seemed probable to him. If Lauren had abducted Red Westwood, he would have needed to take her somewhere remote and isolated. This place looked suitable, and Lauren would have known it. Grace was thinking fast. The first priority was to locate the two of them, but the even greater priority was to get Red away from Lauren unharmed. That was going to be harder. Grace had spoken with Silver, who wanted the helicopter to overfly the farm buildings, where he had a feeling Bryce Laurent had taken Red Westwood, using his thermal imaging camera to establish whether there was anyone in the building. He requested it fly as high as altitude as possible and tried to avoid alerting Bryce Laurent. He was awaiting a call back. Then he turned to the forensic behavioral analyst, Dr. Julius Proudfoot, who was at this moment rummaging for something inside her tan man bag. He retrieved a bottle of First Defense nose drop and pulled off the cap. So if we are right in our assumption that Laurent has seized Red Westwood and is holding her captive, what in your view is the next step going to be, Julius? Grace asked him. Proudfoot shot 2 squirts of drops up each of his nostrils, sniffed, then replaced the bottle in his bag. Sorry, he said in an unusually nasal voice. Got a cold coming on. Instinctively, Grace leaned back a little, getting as far from the man's breath as he could. Proudfoot placed his elbows on his workstation, steepled his pudgy fingers, and stared over the tops of them at an empty chair on the other side of the workstation for some moments. What I don't like, Roy, is what we learned last Friday about Lawrence cash withdrawal from his bank. Cleaning out his account, people only use cash these days when they want to be untraceable. So the first question I would ask is, what reason does Lawrence have for wanting to be untraceable? He committed murder and a number of arson attacks against Red Westwood and her family and wants to go to ground to evade arrest. He's a game player. The cartoon of the parent sailing boat. He's aloof and arrogant. In his own mind, he is far too clever to get arrested. I don't think it's his next step we should be focusing on, right? We need to try to establish an end game that will give us all his steps. So what do you think is his end game? Grace asked. Killing Red Westwood after he enjoyed himself torturing her mentally or physically, and possibly both, then either killing himself or disappearing. However, the fact that he has emptied his bank account indicates he has plans beyond avenging Red to leave the UK for somewhere further afield, either under one of his identities or by creating a entirely new one. Torturing her first, you say? Oh yes, he's been systematically destroying her world, setting fire to everything dear to her. He hasn't gone to all this trouble to capture her just to kill her right away. He's going to have have his sport with her. He'll be driven by his ego, wanting her to grovel, to apologize, probably to beg him to start over with her again. He will want absolute power over her. She's smart, Rogress said. I'm sure she'll play whatever game she needs to, even to the point of pretending she'll take him back if needs be. The problem is, I don't think he's going to accept her offering to take him back. My guess is that he actually won't want her back now. She and her parents have humiliated him. I've seen the text that Red and he exchanged. She was pretty up with him and then turned overnight. She turned for a good reason, Grace said. She found out everything about his past was a lie and he had a history of violence. Yes, but he doesn't see it that way. You can be sure he's not capable of accepting he's done anything wrong. In his mind, he's the injured party, and now he has her in his power. I can't predict the outcome, but it's not going to be good. The only positive is that you have a little time, certainly some hours and possibly a few days. He's not going to kill her quickly, that's for sure. He's going to want to have his day in the sun with her again. You want day in the sun with her first. Grace looked at his watch again. Red Westwood would have met Lauren at the house in Tomden Avenue around midday, more than 6 hours ago. The buildings near the Dyke golf course would have been a 10-minute drive. He went straight there, or maybe to be safe he might have waited somewhere until after dark, in which case he'd have been there not that long ago. If Proudfoot was right, and what he said made sense, whatever might be happening to a woman, she was still alive now, with luck. Julius, if Bryce Lauren is where we think, with Red Westwood and we surround him, what's he likely to do? He has to win. There's no possible option for him. He would kill Red, then himself, and see that as a grand act of defiance against you. He squeezed his hand. He sneezed into your hand, and hastily dug a handkerchief out of his pocket. As he did so, he sneezed again. Bless you, Grace said. Then the phone rang. It was the duty officer on control and to kill the helicopter was minutes away from the target position. Thanks for listening.